I just wanted to say thank you all for coming here to the Cocteau, and it should be a cool night. And we also have an event later in the week. Joe came all the way from Texas. Our next author event came all the way from the grave. We have H.P. Lovecraft on Thursday and Friday night. That is dead, which can never die, but, yes. With strange aeons, even death may die. So whatever. So anyway, I'll turn this over and we'll get this going. We'll do a little introduction. We'll show the episode, and then Joe and the rest of the gang here will answer some questions. So that'll be fun.
Without further ado, Joe Lansdale.
I'm going to keep it short. We're going to show this program, and then we're going to talk afterwards. But I will say this. This is the second season. It's also based on the second book, sometimes a little more loosely than I would prefer. But I won't say that. But anyway, it is very, very well done, and I'm very pleased with this. I've been lucky that I got with Jim and Nick because they care about my work, and that means something to me. I've had to bite and growl a little bit, and then they know that I can say whatever I want, then they can do whatever they want. So anyway, I'm very proud of what they've done, and I believe that this is the beginning of many seasons. I really believe that. And what I'm hoping is that we just get to lay up my underwear and collect a check. Enjoy.
I'm very glad to see Joe here because, he does live in Nacogdoches, Texas, and he was posting during his presidential campaign, and I was saying they're going to burn him out. There's going to be like a fiery cross on his lawn, these things that he is posting, but somehow he survived. They like him there.
Yeah. Well, they're just
He's like the little
right.
pet hippie.
That's it.
It's just Joe. It's all right. Bless his heart.
But yeah, this is Nick D'Amici, and I'll come back in a minute and say, yeah. And I think that I should say this is that Nick and I, we're friends, but we're friends because I met these guys, Jim Mickle, who directed it through Cold in July, which is we showed here. They came to me and said, we want to do Cold in July. I didn't know them from Adam, but I liked them. And so then they sent me the film, the zombie rat film. Yeah, which is very good, by the way. The zombie rat film. They ought to have the zombie rat film night right here. And it was really good, and I said, well, okay, we'll do that. So that led to Cold in July, which is we showed here too, which was a very fine film. And then that in turn led also to Linda Moran, who is a producer on this Hap and Leonard series, as well as Cold in July. And we all got together, but I met these guys first, and then I met Linda, and we all got together, and then they made the film. They wrote all these scripts, they showed them to me, and then when they got ready to make it, they didn't show me the last one. There's a reason. That's just the way it's done. But I was so proud of that film, and I still am. My wife has seen it more times than I have. When George showed it here, every time they showed it, I think they showed it two times here or something, she watched it both times while I was out in the lobby. So they did a great job. And the Hap and Leonard series, they have really worked hard. They have tried to walk some difficult tightropes. You got networks, you got Lansdale, you got what these guys want, and I am so proud of them and this series. And they've stayed true to it. And I was also, when I was talking to Purefoy, he said, we're going to stay true to Hap. So we're going to keep Hap and Leonard the way they're supposed to be. And if you've read the books and you watch this series tonight, I think you can see that they have. And I'm very proud of that. So and then this is George. He wrote some books. Yeah. What George and I want is for these things to be successful because they're actually just advertising programs for our books.
They do sell a lot of books.
Yes.
I know some of you may be writers and maybe, it would be wonderful if a feature film was made of one of my books these days. Forget feature films.
Yeah.
There's nothing like a television series that runs for a long time to drive sales of books.
People get invested in it.
Yeah. I mean, movie comes and goes. It's here, it's gone. A month later, it's gone. We know. We show some of them here in the theater. And occasionally, a few people come to see them. So, Hap and Leonard, it's a lot of fun. How did you guys did Joe pitch you Hap and Leonard, or did you come on Hap and Leonard entirely independently and say, "Hey, there's a TV series here"?
The first thing I read of yours was Cold in July. No, it's not, I'm sorry, that's not true. There was something else before that. I don't remember what it was. Two Bear Mambo was the first.
That was Hap and Leonard, yeah.
That was the first Hap and Leonard book I read, but I saw it with my sister, who's here. We
She's a redhead now.
she's a redhead now. We drove into New York City, and the Angelica was showing a midnight show, Bubba Hotep, with Bruce Campbell was doing the Q&A. And we were like, fuck, Bruce Campbell. So we went and we saw that, and then I was like, whoever the hell wrote that thing, I want to read other stuff from that guy. And then that led to Two Bear Mambo and other stuff. And Cold in July felt like the most feasible to make as a film. And yeah, 7 years later it gets made. But from the very first chapter, I was like, oh my God, I know what this is. Like, I could see this. And I felt the same way with this, but it was like, how do you make a movie out of Hap and Leonard? You know, like you said, the beauty is you get to hang out with these guys for a while. So it kind of happened by accident. We made Cold in July, and then Sundance TV, who was also here, saw Cold in July. I think they had been pitched the Hap and Leonard series, and then I think saw, okay, Hap and Leonard series. Yeah. These guys just did the movie, okay.
Lowell Northrop had owned the rights, and
Yep.
he had those, and I had done a script for him because he was wanting to make a movie, but I kept telling him, I think it's make a better TV series, and then somehow everybody got linked together. Yeah. And I wanted to mention Lowell because he gets left out of this program a lot, and without him, there's no show, Oh, Michael.
Yeah, thanks.
Without Lowell Northrop,
You have a beautiful voice, and we want everyone to hear it.
Yes, it is. It's just engaging. Yeah. So everybody's going, what's he saying? What? But without Lowell Northrop, we wouldn't have a show either, so he needs to be mentioned as well. And there are a lot of other people that are involved, too. It's not a simple thing. Okay, Linda, now it's up to you.
Well, it was nice that it was like they put it together, That Sundance, I remember we were in Sundance Film Festival with Cold in July, and the entire Sundance TV team came to the screening and decided that you were the right person. Yeah.
Oh yeah, they were very excited when we showed Cold in July there, which led to this series. But I want to say this because it was a great moment for me, and because this guy wasn't there. I don't know what the hell he was doing, but we went to Cannes and we got a 5-minute standing ovation. Yeah. And that was great. And I thought it was funny because even Don was like, I think it surprised him, Yeah, it was great. And Karen loved it too, so we were all happy. Yeah,
I was making a movie, Joe.
yeah, sure you were. Sure.
So the casting of the show, I mean, I've read a number of the Hap and Leonard books, and they're very they have this incredibly strong sense of place that you evoke, the East Texas kind of landscape and the way people are, and the landscapes, the way people talk down there. And if I had to, before I ever saw the TV show, if someone told me it was going to be a Hap and Leonard TV show and who would play Hap and who would play Leonard, I would never have guessed Mark Antony and Omar.
Nor I.
Two great actors from great TV shows, but James Purefoy, of course, is British.
Yes.
And he would not have been my first choice, or indeed my first 150 choices to play an East Texas shit kicker, or whatever you want to call him. But he does it brilliantly, and of course Omar, out of The Wire, Michael is marvelous. How in the world did you guys come upon this casting?
Well, Hap is a ladies' man, and there is no better ladies' man than James Purefoy. That's right. And I don't know, he just has sort of a lovable, shaggy dog kind of quality that we brought out in this.
Well, you know, another thing too that's really true is that he's a country boy just like me. He just happens to be a British country boy, and he was champion hog castrator in Britain, and I've done that too. So we sat around and talked about hog castrating a little bit to kind of bond, But I was
there's not a word about that on his IMDb page.
But one of the things too is I was telling them when I was on the set of the first season, and I met James and Michael and of course everybody. But when James had a coach to help him with the dialogue, and he was working on the dialogue. And when I was on the set, he was he would try to. How do you say that he'd write it out, spell it out, and have me? And I could tell he was. I just told him, I said, James, you got to copy my accent. You're just going to put your eye out. I said, you're going to have to find something in the middle, and he did. And I think this season he's even better. I think he's nailed it better. He's relaxed, and because he wasn't sleeping. His wife said he wasn't sleeping at night or something.
Yes, that's true. That's true. We had. So originally, and with Michael, I remember being here, I think at the Cold in July screening, and I remember talking about who would be a cool Leonard, and I remember even Casey being like, that guy from The Wire and from Boardwalk Empire, and I was like, yeah, of course, if you can get that guy, but we have to find the version of that guy that we could get. Yeah. And I remember at first, we thought, oh, Michael would be amazing, but Michael's never going to do it. He's already played a gay character on The Wire, and then we actually, crazy enough, we read with Mahershala Ali, who just won the Oscar, and he was pretty much like signed, sealed, delivered, and then
he was terrific.
And then his schedule didn't work, and then we were like, fuck. And then we looked everywhere, and I remember we met with another British guy. I can't even remember his name. We met with that. Who was that guy? We met with another guy who's like 5'1", and
I remember him.
But it was funny as hell. But we were all like, they're just not Leonard. And then finally, we got a call from Michael's agent. It was like, Michael K. Williams would be interested in this part, and he just read it. Could you meet?
Because James pushed it to him.
No, the other way around.
The other way around.
It was like, can you meet with Michael tomorrow morning at like
That's
9
right,
a.m.?
you're right.
It was like,
You're
yeah, we can meet with
absolutely right,
Michael.
yeah.
And then he came, and then he left, and then we still didn't have a Hap either. And then Michael texted me and said, just so you know, I have a guy who's kind of like the Hap in my life that I have this friendship with, James Purefoy.
And they do. They have that friendship.
And his show is just about, and wink, wink, and then like later, like I think he got killed off the following, like that Wednesday.
They quarrel like an old married couple. For real.
They do.
They're very much like that.
And they had even done another show before. They did a show called The Philanthropist.
Oh, yeah.
They shot a whole season, and it lasted about 3.5 episodes.
Yeah.
And so they had this whole history together that they brought with them.
Well,
They did a lot of bickering on set.
Yes.
And at one point they were duct taped to each other, but they weren't talking.
They weren't. They were actually mad at each other.
They were mad at each other.
Yeah, they were mad at each other, and it was just perfect. It fit, But they also get over it, just like the characters, because that's just how they are. But the original thing when they were doing it for a movie, you know who the original Hap was supposed to be? Bill Paxton. And he would have been great. And he's a friend of mine. We just lost him, But I thought I'd mention that because I love Bill. And I didn't want that to go unsaid. But I thought that was interesting. And the other ones that came up were Jeff Bridges, and then at one point they actually had Josh Lucas and Don Cheadle were supposed to do Mucho Mojo. And then Ted Talley, who did the Silence of the Lambs screenplay, did a screenplay, which is really good. And so they were going to make that
this
film.
was as a feature film.
Yeah, and it got canceled right at the last. And I remember thinking, well, that's too bad. But then TV began to change. And just like George was saying, TV is where it's at now because it's novelistic. And this gives this opportunity for you to, bring these little elements in about the characters that you would lose in a film. You would lose the kind of what I think of is, in a film would be meandering. But in a TV series, you're actually getting to know these characters. The whole stuff when Leonard's walking around
how many
his house.
episodes is your second season? 6. So, 6 hours essentially instead of 2 hours. It's a big difference. Yeah. And 10 hours for Game of Thrones. I'd like 13, but we have 10. It makes makes a huge difference as
Can
to,
we have
as
some
to
of your
how much
budgets?
you can get in.
Can we have
there's-
some of your
There's no
budgets,
novel
George?
ever written that can be made into a movie without severe
tremendous
cutting.
cuts.
Even relatively slim novels like yours, and never mind monsters like mine.
Yeah.
The first thing you have to do is how do you get it down to 2.5 hours?
And there's so much, so much inside in the books. There's so much inside Hap's head. We were just talking about this, and a lot of the time is that it's what he's thinking, and sometimes that's hard to present. But when you have more time, you can do it. You can bring those elements out. You can have them discuss more. You can show scenes that give you some insight, or you wouldn't have that time. You just have to hit the high spots and go on.
Right.
It was one of the hardest things in Cold in July was, I'd say we did a third of the book, probably.
It's a thin book.
Yeah, and it still hurts me that we had to lose some of it because there's some scenes in that book that I was just in love with, and we wrote the first script and it was 200 and some pages, and we were like, oh god,
Longer than the book.
yeah, it's like oh god, and it's like deciding what to cut, and and it breaks your heart when you just can't bring it to screen in a movie. But again, television, you can do it.
That's where I come in.
There you go.
Linda comes in and goes, lose 40 pages, and it's great. Doesn't matter what 40 pages, just 40 pages. The other thing that's tough, that was also the tough part with Cold in July, and I think in the second season here, I think we start to play with it, is I think I love your stuff the most that's first-person narrative, which Cold in July was, which the Hap and Leonard books are. And I think it's tough with Hap and Leonard because your experience of Leonard in the books is always through Hap. So you know about Hap's relationship, or Leonard's relationship with Raoul, but you always know it because he's bitching to Hap later about, So that I think it was tough in the first season because, literally it was almost a real-time story. We always laughed that we learned our TV lesson where we had our two main characters literally handcuffed together for 3 out of the 6 episodes. Like you can never get one guy's story outside of the other. So I think that helped this season by saying, okay, let's take a look at Leonard's relationships outside of Hap, and I think that opened things up. But that's another thing that really kills you, because I remember the same thing with Cold in July. Like there's a version of me that still wants the voiceover version of Cold in July.
Yeah. Well, the only complaint I ever get is, and I do get this, and I've laid it to you guys before. They go, why don't they use more of the dialogue from the books? And but I actually thought that you captured it here, and even when you changed it, it was very much within it. And the problem is that again, even with a television show, you can only spend so much time with people talking. And Meemaw is fantastic. I love Irma Hall. She's from Dallas. That's why she's good. She's from Texas.
She's from Tyler, right?
She's from Tyler, Texas.
Tyler, Texas.
Oh, yeah.
You're right. She's from Tyler.
If anyone saw Lady Killers, with the Coen Brothers movie, that was Irma.
It's a family thing. She owns that movie, and it's got James Earl Jones in it and Robert Duvall, and she walks away with it.
Yeah.
We're gonna do the questions, or what are we ready for?
We can open it. Yeah. Does the audience have questions? Let's pass along the microphone and see what you would like to know.
So please raise your hand and don't ask your question until I get you with the microphone so we can get it on air and stuff like that. So please raise your hand. Who has a question? Don't be shy.
God, we've solved everything.
Everything.
There's one.
Yes, right over here.
So my wife couldn't make it tonight, but she kind of lost her mind when I told her I was coming to this because you did write Bubba Hotep. And so she wanted me to ask you a question about it. And she wanted me to ask, what's it like switching genres? Because that's more of like a horror, and this is more of a traditional Western.
I'm not really aware of switching them. I just sort of write what interests me. And the Hap and Leonard novels are Westerns, really, in a way, which is, why Leonard's always looking at Western stuff. And I loved Randolph Scott being in there because I loved all those Randolph Scott films. That's my stuff, But
My dad called Randolph Scott Old Leather Lips.
But, he was a poor man's Gary Cooper. That's it. For me, I'm not really aware of it. It's just a story comes up and I write it. And sometimes I write what I want, but you're sometimes inspired by what people ask you. They say, I've got an anthology. George has these anthologies. Said, I want you to write a story that's, like Old Venus, like the old style science fiction stories, or Old Mars, or whatever. And so you're inspired by that. But that said, I think I always do actually better when I write from an East Texas perspective. And I think I'm probably better in first person. And I think it's because it's closest to the storytelling voice, and I'm more of a storyteller. And that doesn't mean I don't care about style and dialogue. All that's very important to me. But I love that when you get down to the roots, when someone tells you a story. It's why when some of the modern fiction, and some of it I like, by the way, but where it says it's in this tense where I am driving someone's, and I always think, when you tell somebody a story, it's always past. Yesterday I was down by the lake and I saw this thing move out in the water. It's not, I am down by the lake watching. That doesn't work when you're telling a story. In the same way that I say said and I don't say replied and responded, because I don't find people do that when they talk to me. I was over there and I responded when he said that to me and I replied back. I just don't find that. So for me, I like it because it's closer, at least to me, to the pure art of storytelling, which is an East Texas thing, so I'm not aware of switching genres so much.
Joe has been very promiscuous with his genres, actually. If you, I mean, you know, Hap and Leonard, I would classify those as mysteries, but he has written a lot of great horror, terrific horror stuff. But he's also written science fiction, as his story in Old Venus, you know, classic Edgar Rice Burroughs thing, science fiction. He's written some wonderful westerns. I mean, the classic old-timey, in the Old West kind of things. I think that was one of the first things I read of yours, was the Magic
Magic Wagon.
Magic Wagon, yeah, terrific western. And you have a western movie in the works with Peter Dinklage
I do.
in the lead.
The Thicket.
The Thicket,
Yeah. So that,
Which,
thank you.
should be amazing. You have some good casting there.
I hope it is, and I also have a bunch of television stuff and things like that. But you know, when you're a writer, for me, I mean, and I mean this in no way. To me, movies are always secondary, and films are always secondary. I love them. You know, I grew up on them. I have interest in them beyond just watching them. But I've always been a prose writer, and that's what I do. I have a film I'm planning on directing, and, you know, I'll probably be calling Jim up and going, Jim, help me. I don't know what to do. I'm out here, and they got a camera, and I don't know which way to point it.
Usually
happens-
at the
that
actors.
happens to every
At the actors.
You just threaten, right? It's just about threatening. That's all you have to be as a
threaten the
director,
VP.
right? Yeah, yeah.
That's not what I meant.
All right, who else has a question?
Who has
here?
a question? Yes.
I know that guy.
Can you tell us a little more about how CDL Threet's son ended up getting a role in your movie, what his background is? And I thought he was very compelling as an actor, too.
That's my dad. Isn't he great?
He was great.
That's my dad, everybody. Yes, the first person that I just want to say I'm proud of you. I am so proud of you because we cast that guy. So the guy who plays Melton, his dad was Sedale Threet that played for the Lakers back in the 90s. Yeah, all right. I was going to say we're probably the only two people. But when I found out on set, I was more starstruck than anyone. Like, you're Sedale Threet's son? So, yeah, that's Sedale Threet Jr. And he's great. He's really good.
Why does your dad wear his cowboy hat on his foot?
In case you shoot it.
That must be a West Texas
He
thing.
he read. Yeah, he auditioned. And I remember it was between him and like three other guys, and we all and it was kind of like they're all great. If I had known at the time it was Sedale, it would have been a question. But yeah,
You didn't connect it until after.
until
it
he was on
cast,
set.
yeah.
Yeah, that's
just great.
That's a good
He
question,
auditioned
yeah.
and he just showed. But he gotta say to all the cast, like we have really good cast this season. A lot of these guys are local Atlanta people.
Yeah,
and,
there's Brian Dennehy.
Brian Dennehy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Brian Dennehy only appears here. He's got a lot more to do, as you can imagine.
Yeah.
But,
coming up.
yeah.
And even my daughter appears in it too.
Yep.
Yeah,
Casey,
Yeah.
episode 5.
Episode 5. Episode 5.
Brian Denny used to live here in Santa Fe.
Did he?
Oh.
Well, he had a home here.
Well,
Probably a second or a third home. You
Yeah.
know.
These stories of Hap and Leonard, the ones that I've read, all occur in East Texas. So were the tax credits in the state of Georgia that much better?
Yeah.
Yes.
Linda can answer that question.
Because I've been through a lot of Georgia, and I've been through East Texas, and they don't really look that similar.
Oh, I think they do. I really disagree. I live in East Texas, and in fact, when I was watching that, I thought it really looked like East Texas. And I thought that last year when we filmed in Baton Rouge, it's just, you know, I can throw a rock across the border from my house almost. Yeah, that's a joke. I'm not doing literally.
You can see
But
Baton
I can
Rouge
see,
from your
yeah, I can see
house.
Baton Rouge from my house. I knew that was coming. I was trying to recover, but no, it is different in some ways. But actually, and a lot of this is in the city. But that river looks like the Sabine, and we were on the Sabine when we were in Baton Rouge, which is the one that runs through Glade Water, where I grew up. East Texas has got trees and swamps and alligators and snakes, and you know, once in a while I'll look and I'll recognize a different foliage. Or I'll go, that tree doesn't grow there, or that. But in general, I think it has that feel, it has that vibe, and I also think that the way the film is, the series is put together, it helps you cheat a little bit in giving you that feel. I remember when they did Cold in July, I was really worried about East Texas, and it's important. I'd rather them film in East Texas, of course. And Jim was going to shoot Cold in July, and I said, he said, well, I don't think we're going to be able to do it in East Texas, and we're going to do it in upstate New York. And I went, oh. But he sent me these pictures, and they'd found places that looked like East Texas, around Woodstock. The only difference is you had to not have the mountains, and you had to not have what the train cutaways in through. Yeah, and so they picked it, but a lot of people I knew thought it was filmed in East Texas. But if you're a connoisseur of these things, you will spot them. But I'm actually fairly pleased.
But also, I think we shot in Louisiana season 1, and then because it was so close. But also, this season is more of a city; it's more of a neighborhood, and it's got like an urban setting. That also, if we had tried to find in Louisiana, the closest thing is New Orleans, which it's so hard to make New Orleans look anything like New Orleans.
Anything but New Orleans.
Anything but New Orleans. And then they dropped their tax incentive. And I would just say for New Mexico, which has great tax incentive, it does, as much as it sucks that it forces people to shoot certain things, it does ultimately make the difference.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, as a New Mexican and kind of out on the rim of the film industry, I know how much those tax credits that companies have gotten here have meant to the local economy. And there's been a lot of attacks on it by our now Republican governor. And so I was hoping that I could get you guys to talk about how great tax credits are.
Yeah.
And what they mean, not just to your production, but to the local economy. Yeah. And I'd like to point out that we look a lot like West Texas.
We do. Very
sometimes.
much.
Particularly like down near Clovis.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
come
Yeah.
to New Mexico and do
And
some
a
filming
little bit
here.
like Colorado.
Yeah.
You got a little bit of Colorado.
Well, Texas is a big state. There's a lot of areas there that you can do too, and it's stupid that they don't have the tax, incentives. And the big lie about this is I'm cutting your taxes, and you're throwing away millions of dollars, you dumbass. Because what happens is that when you bring these people in, it surpasses this tax that people are paying, and it brings all this into the economy, which are these people who are paying these taxes, which are getting it back in clothes and gasoline and food and
Housing,
housing and all.
hotels.
Yeah, housing's a big one, and there's all of that. And Louisiana, when we were there, when Jim and Nick and Linda were doing the Hap and Leonard series, if you drove down the road, you saw signs for Underground, the Magnificent Seven. I don't know. There was the one with Lily Tomlin and
I think there were
Jane Fonda.
5 things shooting
Five
simultaneously.
There were 23 other movies shooting in Atlanta when we were there with this.
Everything is shooting
Wow.
in Atlanta. It's pretty
Because
much.
they have the tax incentive. They take the tax incentive away, we'll be somewhere else next year. So, it's just.
But it does make it. I mean, Linda can speak to the dollars and cents to it more. I think.
Yeah,
that's
I mean
pretty much fun.
and the other thing that I think, in addition to accommodation and all those things, are jobs. I mean, that's the biggest things. We probably employ 150 to 200 people on the TV
For
show.
5 months.
Yeah. No, they come. I mean, there are locals, and then a lot of what I found in Louisiana was that a lot of people who had grown up there had moved to LA or New York to sort of try to get their careers underway, and then were so thrilled to be able to go home and work as makeup artists and grips and to do that in the state where they came from.
And now that it's gone in Louisiana, most of those people that worked on season 1 moved. I remember someone moved back to Montreal. There's a lot of people that moved to New York, and now they're at the bottom of the food chain, and they're working, way beyond what they're qualified to do. And it's sad because the whole community, you can see, just very much dry up, and and then it gets hit with the flood right after that, and
It's a little bit of a compromise. You have to look for places that are appropriate for this story. But I think that we did pretty well. Sundance, I have to say, at first, when they called Jim the first time, they said
Toronto.
Toronto.
They have great tax credit.
They have a really good tax
Yeah.
credit, and they wanted us to film Hap and Leonard in Toronto.
Yeah.
Oh, the Canadians have been doing this for years. I mean, they've captured so many. Toronto and Vancouver are both huge. And they had the advantage also at various points the Canadian dollar was low and compared to the American dollar, so the American dollar spent more and they bought more there. But I mean, I dealt with shows out there that had went to Canada for the not only Canadian tax credits, but you'd get Vancouver competing against Toronto. So okay, we're getting the Canadian tax credit, but we're also getting the Ontario tax credit. You know, and then at one point, there's a particular neighborhood. If we shoot there, we can get some tax credit from this neighborhood. So it does carry on here, but the impact can be enormous. I mean, Game of Thrones, of course, our principal location is Belfast, which was controversial in its day because they gave us not only the Paint Hall, the largest soundstage in Europe, for $1 a year. But the Belfast and Northern Ireland, the province of Northern Ireland, gave us $1 million for our budget, which was very controversial. Well, what are you giving $1 million to? HBO has millions and millions of dollars. Why are you taking our tax money and giving it to them? Well, the studies show that we generate $40 million a year for the economy of Northern Ireland every year. $40 million a year, and that's not even count. Even if the show is canceled, it's going to continue to grow because it's become a tourist attraction. People take bus tours of, the Wall and Castle Black, and here's where they shot this, here's where they shot that. So it's a continuing thing if you can get that going.
There won't be any bus tours of the Hap and Leonard series.
It'll be you and your Prius.
Like I said, here's where Leonard pissed on that guy's face, right here.
I got one right up here.
But there are always independent, there are always studies and audits that to figure out how much, for how much money is paid out in a tax credit, how much the state earns. And, I think in New York it's something like 6-1. I don't know what it was in Louisiana, but, they're independently conducted, and it can be verified that they generate probably not always 40 million.
40 to
for
1.
right,
Proven.
40 to 1.
You heard it here first.
Right.
Well, I mean, it's sometimes hard to explain it because the principality gives $1 million, but they don't necessarily get the $1 million back. It's not a loan; it doesn't come back directly. It comes back indirectly because of hiring people and creating jobs and hiring the crew and hiring the people who make the costumes and hiring the drivers, and then the people there will eat in local restaurants and they stay in the hotels, and some of them like the place and they buy houses and all that. So it's a little complicated in that way. And I've also found in trying to discuss this with people really a fundamental lack of understanding about Hollywood budgets work. Every show is really its own entity. Every movie is its own entity with its own budget. Just because you're making a movie for Warner Brothers doesn't mean that Warner Brothers, with their, worth $50 billion, will give you as much money as you need. You have a budget, and you better stick to that budget. And Warner Brothers isn't necessarily going to give you another nickel over what your budget is.
Or they may only distribute it, and you may have had to get it made somewhere else. Because
Right.
a lot of them do that. A lot of TV is like Longmire, for instance, which was on for I guess
Shot here in Santa Fe.
Well, about 4 or 5 seasons or something, and then they decided to cancel it. But it was the most popular show they had. But it was farmed in. In other words, it was made outside, so they didn't feel like they were making enough money, so they moved it to Netflix. So, which is another thing that's happening. But I think we got questions.
Oh, I just wanted to say thank you to Sundance for taking a chance on some of the shorter series, specifically
Yes.
Rectify. Ray McKinnon wrote that beautiful ending. So thank you to Sundance. I really appreciate what you guys do.
Sundance. They're drunk.
They're out there. Thank you. I think this gentleman here had a question.
Great show, really great series. So I have a question. As you're working on this, do you have is it the same director for all the shows, or do you? So you direct all of them?
No, I actually didn't do any this season. So we did 6 episodes first season, 6 episodes this season. I did 4 in the first season. This season we had 3 different directors, and we actually shoot in blocks of 2, so we almost shoot it like a little movie. So we'll shoot episode 1 and 2 together like a movie, and then 3 and 4. So the director of this first one is Maurice Marable, who did an awesome job. He does a great job on the next one. Abe Sylvia, who wrote the next episode, did 3 and 4. Those are terrific. And then he was on Nurse Jackie for a long time. He did a great movie called Dirty Girl, if anyone's seen Dirty Girl, Juno Temple. And then Tim Southam did the last 2, he's done a lot of Bates Motel, he's done a lot of stuff.
Do you have a team of writers, or does just one writer work on each script?
We do. Do you want to describe the process?
Yeah, I mean, the first year it was me, Jim, and one other writer.
Evan
Katz, basically. And then Linda, we were in Belladonna's office, is where our office was. So Linda would sit in, so we had an extra brain at the table. And this season we had actually me, Jim, John Worth is obviously the showrunner, and then 2 other writers. So it's interesting, you know. It's just good to get different opinions and different people in the room. I mean, the biggest thing for me is always if the voices become too many voices, and I think we found a way where it didn't. You know what I mean? That was my fear. Is like, oh God, if we open this up to too
That
many,
was my fear.
too many writers, we'll have too many voices, and that can water down what you're trying to do. Especially we're trying to pay homage to Joe's voice. Ultimately, is our job. So.
So do you let Joe in the room?
No.
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 They're mean to me.
It's like 15 weeks or 12 in that
Yeah,
room?
it was 12.
Day in and day out.
They're mean to me. I did write one of the episodes.
Yes,
he did.
Joe wrote the 5th one.
For this season.
Yep.
So where are you headquartered?
We were in New York. Most shows are in LA. There's not a ton in New York that have writers' rooms in New York, but we had a writers' room in New York, and then we went down to Atlanta and shot in Atlanta. Last year we shot in Baton Rouge. It's cool, you know. I mean, George knows them. Other TV people know. It's an interesting. It's like school. It's 12 weeks, and it's 8, 9, 10 hours a day, and you sit at a conference table and you go through the book. And you break it down. You say, all right, we have 6 episodes. You know, this would be great here. This would be great here. Then you look and you go, oh fuck, we got 8 straight acts where we don't have. Okay, and then you start to. It's a great puzzle piece. And last year it was myself and Nick and Evan who did a movie called Small Crimes, just premiered in South by over the weekend. That's why he wasn't a part of this season. We tried to mix it up and get a really, we were 3 white guys writing a show about a gay black dude, based on a book by a straight white guy. So we tried to diversify this season a lot. So we got some fresh voices in there, which led to great conversations, which lead to a lot of no, which and so it really I think helped to open the show up.
It's up for last season was up for a GLAAD award too.
Yes.
I think that's something I'm very
We are
very
nominated
proud
for a
of.
GLAAD award.
I've gotten a lot of emails and mails from people, from people, and even a few phone calls from people say, you know what? And people I met says, I'm really want to thank you for opening this up. And I don't give myself credit for that. I was just in the right place at the right time. But the idea that there are people that have told me that they felt better about being gay because Leonard was gay, that means something, and there's these little things that mean, and the black, I even had people would tell me, say, I didn't like him queers, and I started reading them books, and I kind of got thinking, well, they just like other people. I mean, really, that's the conversation I've had. And other things, with black and white, says, I just didn't think about it that way. I'm around black people all the time. I just come think of it. I know more black people than I know white people, And so you get people actually becoming aware of things they're not even really aware of.
And it's easy to pat ourselves in the back for it now, but you wrote these in '92, so.
Yeah. No, actually, it goes back
Sorry,
to 90.
90.
I wrote it in '89 and then '90. And I had a question. I had a question for the big brains. So if, as it continues, are you? We've had the first 2 in the essentially the late '80s, which is when they were supposed to happen in the books, even though it was the '90s when they came out. Are you going to continue moving it forward? Are you thinking about just keeping it in the '80s? What's the approach?
I don't know if we ever asked that question. The '80s is.
Forward.
What's that?
I mean, incrementally forward.
Yeah, incrementally forward. Yeah. And then as soon as it.
about them, they don't age.
Yeah.
That's why they've stayed younger and I've gotten older.
Yeah. As soon as cell phones come in, then we just cancel the show.
I actually have cell phones in
Rusty puppies have cell phones.
Yeah. And then I think the 3 or 4 before that had cell phones. Yeah.
So what year is it in Hap and Leonard's universe?
88.
In this, yeah.
In the TV show?
Yeah.
What about Rusty Puppies? What year is it?
Rusty Puppy is current. Because I started them back in late
They're
80s
like the
is when I
Simpsons.
started writing them. Yeah.
Right.
And but they were 60s people. And what it was is I wanted to write a novel about the 60s. And I kept trying to for years. And I said, I want to write something that had some importance about the 60s. And finally I said, I'm not smart enough. So I said, I'm just going to write something. And Hap's, a lot of his background is mine. I was actually almost in prison. But a lot of his background is mine. So I just said, I'll do that. And what happened is that without me trying, those things begin to pop up. And so then I just kept moving them up 88, 9, 88, 89, 90. And then recently they're all in the 2000s. And they're getting, they're getting older, but I don't age them when I don't write about them. So they stay a little younger, but they're in their 50s, and I'm going to age them on later.
I wrote a novel about the 60s, too. It almost destroyed my career.
I love that novel. Armageddon Rag is a terrific novel. Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Love that
So
novel.
you're the one who bought it.
I was. I bought 2 copies.
Yeah.
The great thing about setting them in another decade is to be able to, look at some of the topics that are very relevant today, but to see them through this prism of another decade.
yeah.
And I feel like season 1 was, we got to look at issues of economic inequality, and a lot of that, the Reaganism kind of that Reaganomics that began in the 80s, and now we're living the consequences of those policies. But so it was really interesting to look at that in the 80s, and then this season we look at a lot of issues of race and the relationship
one
with
of the things
the
y'all
police.
did really
and
cool was in the first season. You're exactly on it. Was when Jimmy's character in the book, he's soldier and he's not quite as obvious, but that was the whole idea of this changing thing, and you had to make it more obvious in that. And Jimmy nailed that transition from the hippie years to this more. We're out for money. We're out for doing what we want, and that was a beautiful.
That was the thing about that. Looking back through time, it's interesting because you're writing it as you see it, and then we get the privilege kind of getting to look back at it at that point and go, like, really, Savage Season is kind of about capitalism and 80s clashing with 60s. Only in the 80s, it's a different thing. Now you kind of look at it and you go, oh yeah. The thing about looking at this was once we started looking at like, okay, I think we ended up saying that this was October of '88, or I think that was when we had to broke it down because October is when the thing happens later. Spoiler alert. But you start looking through and you're like, oh, that summer Straight Outta Compton came out, and that changed, that changed the culture of inner cities, and so it's an interesting thing when you get to kind of throw back and look at it through there.
What other questions? Who else has a question out here? Yes.
So I came to the Nick D'Amici, Jim Mickle partnership through Cold in July because Joe came and did an event here, and that movie blew my tiny mind.
Thanks.
And I went back through and checked out some other stuff. I've seen Mulberry Street and I've seen Stake Land, and I enjoyed it all. But I mean. Yeah, all that stuff's amazing, but I really do enjoy to see Nick in front of the camera, too.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if there's a role coming up in the Hap and Leonard series.
Veil.
Veil. Yeah. Oh, yeah. He was just in a novella, but
It's it's just weird, You're a producer and a writer on something, trying to put yourself in a role is kind of like.
I saw you as Charlie, though. I did. I saw you as Charlie. It didn't work out that way.
We got a
but-
great Charlie.
Oh, he's great, but that's not the point. We got a great Hap, but Bill Paxton would have been a great Hap too. It'd been interesting, It's always what's funny is when you get good people, they bring something of themselves, and then you go, yeah, that's them. Yeah. That's what I thought, because they make you think that.
Have you seen Late Phases?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Ambrose, actually. That's
Nice.
kind of my favorite.
Yes, and Stake Land too.
Stake Land, too.
Yes. What else are you? You're up for something cool, but
I got a few projects that I'm looking at. A friend of Adrian Bagliano, I just got a script from him through Adrian that I haven't read yet. I got to read it, but I'm up for reporting that. And then a guy I worked on Stakeland 2 with sent me a script. You know, I get a million scripts, and I got to be honest. I mean, you know, I've written a lot of scripts, and a lot of them are shit, and I just don't send them to people. But people tend to send out every script they write. Most of them are shit. And guy called, you know, sent me an email. I want to send you a script, you know, and I work with him, and I feel obligated. And I was like, oh God, here we go. And he sent me a script, and the title of the script was "Bring Me the Head of Sam Peckinpah." And I said, oh, that doesn't sound like shit to me. And it's a really good script, and he wants me to play Sam Peckinpah.
Oh, that'd be great. I had a friend that knew Sam Peckinpah. He broke his leg. He broke Sam's leg. Max Evans.
Wow.
He's still around. He lives out here in New Mexico. He a great writer, but he's in his 90s now. But that's an interesting connection.
That's cool. So I'm hoping that comes to fruition. We'll see. You know, he's trying to raise the money and get it done now. So that'll be really interesting.
Nick's already written Stakeland 3.
Road Stakeland 3. We'll see if they'll do it.
And we had a question over here too.
Oh, let me get the mic to you here. If you guys will pass this down, please.
And I'm hoping to rope him into something that I'm doing too. So.
You don't have to rope me, Joe.
I don't have to rope him. Okay.
So, Joe, you mentioned earlier that you write what interests you, and that's how
Yeah.
you kind of move forward. And here in the process that these guys talked about in adapting some of your work into the TV show, kind of curious what the creative process or discipline is that you use when you sit down or when you start thinking about a novel.
You know, I never know what I'm going to write till I sit down. And when I sit down, I don't plot. I don't plan. I get up every morning just about. I wrote this morning here, you know. But I usually write in the mornings, and I get up, and I do about, I always say 3 hours, and my wife goes, "You're a liar, you was in there 30 minutes. And but if my 3 to 5 pages comes to me, I'm done if I want to be. But if it keeps going, you know, some days I'll have 10 or 15, and then I just write it all the way through. And every day the next scene is there. And then when I get through, I go back and give it a polish, and I might add something that will give some more greater impact to another scene or something. But for me, I don't want to say it's an easy process, but probably I'm about as natural to do it as anybody because I take it from a storytelling standpoint. And, you know, not everything you do is brilliant, but as I'm a professional writer, and I'm proud of that. But I get up in the morning, and the story is just there. I mean, usually I'll have an idea that's just kind of swirling around, but I never sit down and plot it out. It gets to be too many characters. George and I just kill people. That's the way you solve that problem. But you know, seriously, I just do it as it comes to me. I don't know how to say it much more. My daughter is learning to write, and my son is writing screenplays now and stuff. But they're always at. I said, you know, you're really going to have to find somebody else to tell you because I don't know how I do it.
You know, the killing people thing is much easier for us novelists.
Yeah.
I've found that when I work in television and film, especially television, you know, you meet the actors and they become people, and then you realize, well, I'm not just killing this character. It's Harry is going to be unemployed, and and I like Harry. His wife is nice, and gosh, do I want to cost Paul Harry his job? It's harder. But, you know, fortunately with Game of Thrones, I killed them all years in advance. So even when I got to know the actors, hey, please don't kill me. I killed you 3 years ago. I can't help it. It's in the books. It's already done. Joe, I had a question for you. We had about 3 weeks ago, so we had Carrie Vaughan in here for one of our author events, and we've just put it up on my Not a Blog, by the way, if you guys want to see that. And Carrie, of course, is the author of numerous things, but she's most famous for her Kitty Norval series of urban fantasies about a werewolf radio show host. Began with Kitty in the Midnight Hour. And she wrote like, I don't know, 13, 15 of them. I forget exactly how many. But she recently ended the series. And she's continuing to write. She's gone on. She's got other characters and other things. And when I was interviewing her, she said, yes, I always intended to end the series. Even when I was writing the first one, Kitty in the Midnight Hour, and it was successful, and it hit the bestseller list, and I knew I was going to write more. And, you know, my publishers wanted me to keep writing these forever because they're best-selling books. But I had this ending in mind. I wanted to have a strong ending. and I moved toward that, and I finally reached there. Do you have an ending in mind for Hap and Leonard that they will eventually reach after 15 books or 20 books or something, or are they more the kind of characters who just continue forever?
I have an ending in mind, but it's not an ending that's going to be definitive. But it will come to a point to where you'll say, this is it, you know.
Right.
Yeah, that's what I have in mind. I don't want to give it away.
Okay.
I will say it
you don't
ends
have
on
to
the
give it
front
away.
porch. That's all I'll say.
Right.
That's the only thing I know. I don't plot it all, but I know that one thing.
Is there an armadillo on the?
There is an armadillo on the porch.
Oh, that was a cute scene where he didn't want to order anything with an armadillo.
That's Nick. That was Nick. That was all Nick.
Yeah, armadillo chicken fried steak, armadillo burger.
In my car, I was in South by Southwest with Joe, and I bought not a stuffed, but a little plastic fur-coated armadillo with a bobber head, you know. Yeah. And it's on the front thing of my car, and its name is Bob.
There's a Bob Armadillo in one of the books in the series. I don't even remember where he shows up. A Bad Chili maybe, or Rumble Tumble or something.
Do we have any more questions?
Any more? Or should we send Joe out to deface books?
Thank
I
you.
think we could do that. Once again, thank you, George, Linda, Jim, Nick, and Joe.
Thanks, guys. Thank you, Sundance.
Thank you.